Hi, everyone, and welcome to IDG Live. We've made it. We are at House of the Dragon Day. Again, this is the start of season 2 of House of the Dragon. For those wanting to know when it starts, the actual TV show, it starts in about or just under 4 hours' time from now. So, what we're doing here, this is a pre show live stream. So, we will go on not hugely long compared to some of my other live streams, but we'll keep this to a tight 2-ish hours, I think. Um, what I want to do is look back a little bit on last season, just refresh everyone's memories. Maybe you've not seen it since it aired, a little bit of a look forward to what might be happening in episode 1. Yeah, just going to take as many questions as I can from the chat as we're going through. You may notice a slightly different setup. This is a charity live stream. All of my pre-show live streams during House of the Dragon season 2 will be charity live streams in aid of international rescue, which is a fantastic charity. What they do is they go to help the people who need it the most, the in the conflict zones, the places of natural disasters, and they provide whatever is needed at the time, be that food, be that medical assistance, be that shelter, and then as time goes on, they try to move into more sort of sustainable kinds of help so that people can just get back up on their feet. It's really important work, and all I'm asking, I'm not going to give the big sell on this, but all I'm asking is if you would otherwise give a super chat, if you would otherwise just wish to show your appreciation at all for the live streams, please be as generous as you are able. This is at the moment only available on YouTube. I'm streaming this on YouTube and also on X. Apologies, I don't know how to set this up on X. If anyone knows, let me know. That'd be fantastic. But that's the deal. There is a link somewhere down here for you to be doing the donating. So thank you very much indeed. Um, right, so what else should we say? One thing before we can get into this. The other thing is the spoiler warning. Uh, the rule on this channel is book spoilers are okay, show spoilers are not okay. The moderators do an amazing job, so quick shout out to the moderators straight away. If there are any leaks, then we will try and make sure they stay clear of both the chat. I am not going to be telling you anything, even if I've heard stuff, I'm not going to be passing that on. But books, yeah, I will happily talk about what happens in the books. What has happened in the TV show in season 1 was that they did stick pretty closely to the books, but there were some significant changes, particularly in terms of different characters' motivations and things like that. So we shouldn't assume that just because something's happened in the book, that means it's going to happen exactly like that on the TV show. Okay, all of that out of the way. What I'll do is a sort of a quick catch up for everyone, I think, for what happened towards the end of last season, so that we've got this idea of what kind of momentum is taking us into the next season. Because at a high level, season 1 took place over 25 years or so, actually. It was really quite stretched. You'll remember there were a few time jumps as they went through. Now all of the time jumps are a thing of the past. We're now going, the pace is slowing down to sort of normal pace. We're going to see things as they move through. And what that means is that episode 1 of season 2 is following on almost straight away from the end of season 1. So, where were we at the end of season 1? Well, Viserys is dead. The crucial thing in terms of motivations with King Viserys' death is that whereas he did indeed stick all the way through to the very end with his support for Rhaenyra as his heir, Alicent was there just before he died and thinks that on his deathbed he actually said that he wanted Aegon to succeed him. Now, this seems on the show, this wasn't in the book, but this seems on the show to be a genuine misunderstanding. She seems to have thought he did say Aegon. He was actually talking about Aegon's prophecy, but she seems to have misunderstood him. So we have Alicent there believing that she is in the right, putting her son Aegon on the throne. So Team Green then crowned Aegon. There's a bit of a lot of episode 9, if you remember, was actually a bit of a race to find Aegon, who had gone missing down in Fleabottom, between two different parts of Team Green. Expect this to carry on. We often talk about Team Green versus Team Black. Everyone must choose, pick your side. Team Green is not united. Team Black is not united. So it's not as if there's a unified approach from Team Green. We'll talk a little bit more about what that might imply for season 2 in a bit. But first, just keep fresh in your minds. Team Green was not united in their approach to how to even crown Aegon. The idea, first of all, Otto, he wanted to get it done in secret. He wanted to get on the front foot in the war and act very quickly and eliminate the threat from Rhaenyra. Alicent won out there. She decided that actually Aegon should be crowned in a way that looks as legitimate as possible, in front of many, many witnesses, being crowned with Aegon the Conqueror's crown, being given the sword, Aegon the Conqueror's sword, Blackfire, having the High Septon there blessing him. She wanted all of the razzmatazz, the things that go around a normal coronation, to be there for her son. And that's what happened in the end. But the divisions in Team Green are still there. So episode 10 focused a lot more over on Team Black. Now, you'll remember just after Aegon got crowned, then Rhaenys made her dramatic escape on Melis, the dragon bursting up through the floor of the dragon pit, then flying away. A couple of things to remind you that it was a scene just for the TV show. It was a little bit controversial amongst fans of the book. This completely shifts where Rhaenys is as a character. But the crucial point is that she decided that it wasn't her place to start or end this war. She could have killed all of Team Green in one go, right there and then. She decided not to. It wasn't her war. And secondly, and I don't know when they're going to pick up on this, but I'm absolutely sure of it, this is one of the starting points for the small folk getting really quite disgruntled about dragons, because they didn't draw any attention to it. But a dragon burst up through the floor. Dozens of small folk were certainly killed during that. Everyone was incredibly frightened, and nobody amongst the royalty seemed to really care. And this is going to build. We know that it builds until what may well be season 3 or 4. I don't know what pace they're going to go through this, but when we get there, King's Landing is going to be this absolute hotbed of kind of febrile animosity towards the Targaryens and dragons. So that was kind of the starting point. But anyway, episode 10, the finale, was focused mostly on a Team Black. They get the news. Rhaenys brings the news, and we're there with Rhaenyra and Daemon when they hear this, and this sends Rhaenyra into labour, and it's really quite traumatic scenes. She loses her baby that she was going to name Visenya, and she's there. It's obviously very all-consuming for her, and she isn't able to be focusing in on reacting to what's happened over in King's Landing. Daemon is there wanting to do things, striding around desperately, wanting to fly over to Harrenhal, to Riverrun, to make sure that they've got allies. Grover Tully there. He's convinced this is the Riverlands is the heart of where this battle is going to be fought. But Rhaenyra gives the clear message. Nothing is going to happen. Nothing's going to get agreed without her say so, and she's not agreeing anything right now. Eric Cargill, one of the two twins from the Kingsguard, he arrives with the crown of Viserys. The Targaryens just as a complete aside, the Targaryens have a lot of crowns for kings. It's not like they have an imperial crown which is passed down and everybody uses the same crown. Quite often, different kings, different rulers among the Targaryens had different crowns if they were trying to signify different things. Aegon the Second in King's Landing was crowned with Aegon the Conqueror's crown. That's we're trying to show that he's here. His name is Aegon. He's in the spirit and tradition of Aegon the Conqueror. That's the message that they were very much trying to give. Whereas Rhaenyra is then crowned with the crown of her father. The message here is very clear. My father chose me as his heir. So she gets crowned, and then we get to what is known as the Black Council. Now, the Black Council is where we had the Green Council already. It was the small council dominated by Team Green. The Black Council is when they're just trying to figure out how are they going to respond to this. And the first thing that they have to do is just try and figure out what is the state of play right now. Because undoubtedly, at this stage, Team Green are in the ascendancy. They're in King's Landing. They've got all of the things that make them look like they're the proper rulers. As we've already said, the legitimacy signs are all there for Aegon II. He's got the crown, he's got the sword Blackfire, he's literally sitting there on the Iron Throne. He is currently ruling the Seven Kingdoms from King's Landing. And added to which, if you kind of add up their main supporters, House Hightower are there, House Lannister are there. They've got some ready-made supporters, strong. And Team Black at the moment don't have anyone guaranteed to be on their side on the mainland. A few small allies, yes, dotted about here or there. But of the main houses, no one has yet declared for them because they were on the back foot. Team Green also, and this will become very important, it was just a passing reference, but it will be very important in the future. Team Green have also got control of the Iron Throne's finances, their money, basically, all of their money chests. And they've done something quite significant, which is they've said, okay, let's split this up into 4 parts. One of them we're going to send over, we'll just leave it in the Iron Bank of Braavos, just on deposit there. That's safe over there. One is going to Casterly Rock, which is probably the hardest place in all of Westeros to try and actually invade, attack. And one of it's going down to Old Town with House Hightower. The other quarter is going to stay in King's Landing. That's going to be our fighting fund. So what the implication of this is, even if Rhaenyra manages to claim King's Landing, she won't have the money from the Iron Throne. So that's a really significant thing as well. So at the moment, Team Green are politically in the ascendancy. They're on the front foot. We've already talked that they're a little bit divided, but they're on the front foot and people see them as being in control. The Black Council then just kind of goes through and tries to work out what advantages does it have? What hope does it have? And there's 2 broad areas that 3 broad areas that they look at. The first is alliances, potential alliances. They haven't got lots of people signed up to them yet, but there are lots of people they think might do. House Arryn are the most likely. They are relatives of Rhaenyra. Her mother was an Arryn, so that's pretty strong. Added to which, at the moment we have, and I think we've seen images. We are going to see her at some point in the season 2, Lady Jane Arryn in the Vale. She is there, and she's inherited a head of men, and therefore her claim to be in charge is the same kind of claim as Rhaenyra's is, that she should be ruling the Seven Kingdoms, even though there are some men slightly further down the line of succession who are born after her. So the Arryns, they're pretty sure, but they do need to just go in and check. We've got the Tullys in Riverrun. that we'll come into that a lot, because the River Run situation, they basically state Grover Tully is old and they think he's going to be on their side, but they're not 100% sure. So that's something they need to deal with. The Starks are very distant, obviously, but they're hopeful that the Starks, they keep their word. So yes, of course, they'll probably stay on Rhaenyra's side, but they need to go and confirm that. And then there's House Baratheon, as big and powerful then as it was in the time of A Song of Ice and Fire. And House Baratheon could go either way. They think probably it will be on their side, but again, they need to check. So they send out Jace and Luke to act as diplomats. They're told they're not there to do any fighting. They're just there to act as diplomats to try and get support from people. Jace heads north and to the Vale and to the north, and then Luke heads south to House Baratheon at Storm's End. We'll come on to him in just one moment. So that's the first thing. The second thing is dragons. Now, the dragon situation is quite finely balanced. The fact is that Team Black have got a lot more dragons. There's 20 dragons around at the moment, and all but 4 of them are in their control. So they've got a massive advantage to start with. However, by far the biggest, strongest, and most deadly of them is Vhagar, is on the other side. And most of their dragons are either without riders. There are 5, 6 of them who are without riders at the moment on Dragonstone, and potentially also on Driftmark, just hanging out. We'll talk about them a little bit more in a bit. And the ones they do have, quite a lot of them are very young, and the people who ride them are also very young. So they're not, as we saw at the end of season, well, I'll talk about it in just one second. The Battle over Shipbreaker Bay, Vhagar easily outmatched Arrax, and Arrax is not the smallest dragon they have. So the sides are quite evenly matched in terms of dragons. And I have to just say, I think I've said many times before, but if Team Black just waited for 5 years, their dragon superiority would have been so huge that this wouldn't even have been a question. But the timing was such that Vhagar, massive, huge, and powerful. We have Greenfire and Sunfire, both of them also based in King's Landing, plus Tessarion all the way down in Old Town. That they would be more than outmatched in a few years' time. But Team Black weren't about to hang around and wait for that to happen. So the third thing is Corlys Velaryon turns up. He's been, say, unwell at death's door, and finally he recovers and he declares for Team Black. This is a huge win for Team Black. And it wasn't assured. Actually, Rhaenys is the person who persuades him. He basically says, "Oh, let's stay neutral. Let's stay out of it." And she basically says, "Well, firstly, it's your grandchildren who are in line for the throne here. They will, if the other side win, they will be killed." And then secondly, she says, actually, Rhaenyra is the coolest head in the room right now, astonishingly. She's the one who is looking for ways to hold the kingdom together when everyone else seems to be just wanting war. So Corlys joins. House of Velaryon at the time are the richest house in the Seven Kingdoms. They also have the biggest and best navy, certainly on the East Coast. We've got the Ironborn, and over on the West Coast that can definitely compete with it, but the Velaryons have got a massive navy. So this is a huge win, getting them on side. And so the third really big action that they take from the Black Council is they say, we're going to do a blockade, a naval blockade across the Gullet. Now, I've not got the map up here, but the gullet is that stretch of water in the middle of which you've got Dragonstone, a drift mark, but it just sort of funnels down into King's Landing. And if you have a naval blockade across the gullet, you're stopping food imports, everything going into and out of King's Landing. And that will start to bite the deeper into the war you get. Things can still travel across land, but Daemon is in particular very keen to be taking the Riverlands and trying to encircle King's Landing so that they're basically going to try and starve it out. So that's what the Black Council decide. We get one other thing which kind of gets lost, I think, when we're talking about what happens here, which I think will have quite big implications going forward, which is Otto turns up. He's been forced basically by Alicent, who at the time in Team Green seems to have a reasonable bit of power. She sends Otto with an offer. It's not much of an offer really for Team Black. It says, if you bend the knee, if you admit that you were in the wrong, if you say, yeah, Aegon's the rightful king, then we'll let you all live. You can keep Dragonstone. That's fine. It's not a problem. Your family can keep Driftmark, and we'll just move on. That's completely unacceptable to people like Daemon, but Rhaenyra considers it, and she takes a lot of the sting out of the situation, a lot of the heat out of the situation by saying, yeah, I will think about this and I'll get back to you, Otto. Otto heads back off. And Daemon confronts her and says, we can't do this. You're the queen. These guys have just usurped. They've taken your throne. You have to just swat them out of the way. How can you even consider this offer? And she says, because of Aegon's prophecy, the one that got passed down from Aegon the Conqueror, that says that this is absolutely essential. House Targaryen have to stay strong. They have to stay united. They have to stay ruling the Seven Kingdoms. And Daemon goes, say what? What is that? And he gets angry. He actually starts throttling her. And the anger there on his part and the realization on Rhaenyra's part is that he doesn't know about this prophecy, which is passed down from ruler to their heir. And the only reason that Daemon wouldn't know about this is if Viserys never thought that Daemon was his heir. He never thought he was going to or wanted to pass on the Iron Throne to Daemon, which would have really stung Daemon. And it means that Rhaenyra, probably, as far as we're aware, I've got a question on this coming up later, so we'll dig into it a bit more. But as far as we're aware, at this moment in time, Rhaenyra is the only person alive in all of the Seven Kingdoms who knows about this prophecy. So there are some big implications going on there. There's marital issues going on with Daemon and Rhaenyra. There's the really quite abhorrent side of Daemon coming out that was always there in season one, but we didn't really focus on it a lot of the time. But it is definitely there. And also this kind of disagreement about tactics and priorities. Daemon is wanting to attack. He's wanting war. And Rhaenyra here is not. Then we move to Jace. So, Luke. Jacaerys heads north. We'll be covering him, I'm pretty sure, actually, in this episode coming up. But Luke goes down to deal with Boris Baratheon, and doesn't really have huge amounts of luck, it needs to be said. He gets there, he basically gets told no. Aemond beat him to it from Team Green. Aemond turned up and was there already basically offering him his hand in marriage, the king's brother to a Baratheon, getting the Baratheons back into the royal family. And so Lord Baratheon is understandably saying, well, what are you offering me? And Luke wasn't in a position to offer him anything, so he basically just had to turn around and go back. But Aemond then pursued him. Remember, those two of history. It was when they were much younger. It was Luke who slashed out at Aemond and cut out his eye. And Aemond follows him on Vhagar. And the crucial thing, we know how all that ends, and Vhagar just gets rid of Arax and Luke with complete ease. There's not even a contest between them. But the crucial thing is that both dragons were not under the control of their riders. This was one of the big underlying themes of season 1, was the fact that the dragons are not controlled by their dragon riders, by the people that they're bonded to. We often think of the bond as being this incredibly special connection, which it clearly is. But it doesn't mean that the dragons are completely under the control of the people who are riding them. Now, we got this from Viserys, who says it outright that we're foolish to think that we could control the dragons, and then we see it again here, right at the end of the season, where it becomes apparent that actually Aemond hadn't intended to kill him. In the book, there's no hint of that. It's very clear that Aemond did intend to kill him. But that's where we leave it. The last shot is when news of this gets back to Rhaenyra, and we had the script, the little snippet from the script here, where it sort of gives stage directions to the actors, and then so Daemon walks up to Rhaenyra, whispers in her ear that her son's just been killed. And she turns around and just faces down, looks right down at the camera where all her allies are. And in her eyes is the look of war, we're told. So that's where we left it. War had been building all of this time, and then suddenly we're there. So that's a kind of a recap of where we left this. This episode 1, season 2 is going to pick up after that. Maybe straight away, it may be like a few days, a week or so later, but there's no huge time jump anymore. That's not happening. We're going to see the reactions to that from both sides. So what does all this mean for sort of season 2? Well, I think Team Green, the first thing is how do they respond to what Aemond did? Will we find out what Aemond even says? Because it's very clear in the book that he comes back and he says, yeah, I killed him. Is he going to admit that he didn't mean to? This was just a big accident? Because that would be also admitting that he can't control his dragon, which would be kind of undermining the image that he'd been so carefully curating at all this time. And we will also start to see continue to see the breakdown of Team Green into factions. Now, who's on which side will start to shift a little bit, I see. Don't expect it just to be exactly where the sides broke down at the end of season 1. There will be a clear dividing line in the books, at least, between those who are desperately wanting war quickly. Let's get on the front foot. Let's just try and get rid of Rhaenyra as fast as we can. And those who want a slightly more measured approach to these things. So expect that from Team Green's perspective. Team Black, Rhaenyra, in a matter of days, has now lost 2 children. So the emotional impact on her is going to be huge. We've seen several shots in the trailers of her kind of like seemingly out at the scene of where he died, looking for his body, wanting to grieve, and just looking completely aghast. And incidentally, the balance to this is Alicent over on Team Green, who we've seen lots of shots of her looking and saying things that sound as if they're kind of full of contrition, as if she's not really. So she's like lighting candles, she's sort of gazing out mournfully over bodies of water, that kind of thing. She's not looking as if she's actually happy with how all of this is played out. And I think that they will, I mean, you'll see from behind me, the publicity that they've been producing for the show for season 2 is still very much about the underlying relationship and tension between these two women. So expect that again to be highlighted. This the two women with their children and the relationship between them and their children, and how that impacts on the relationship between those two. This is a change up. I think it's a good one from my own perspective from the book, in that they have aged up Rhaenyra. So in the book, there's actually a significant, it's about a 9-year age gap between them. So if you go all the way back early on in season 1, when Alicent marries Viserys, she's about 18, whereas Rhaenyra's about 9. So the relationship between them at that point is not friends and equals. It's actually it's the stepmom. So the connection was not the same. As I say, I think this is a good change for the TV show, and I think it adds an extra layer to the conflicts that we're seeing. Otherwise, the family tie between the two sides is slightly, I say diminished is probably the wrong way of saying it, but the fact that there are some people who may have conflicted emotions about their being in a war in the first place, I think adds extra layers. So we've got this. We've got her reaction to losing 2 children, which in the book and probably on the show will lead to, again, a slower response from Team Black. Daemon will be itching to be getting on with things, to be doing stuff. We see him again in the trailers. He's out there at some point. He heads out to Harrenhal. He's out in the field with an army. He's doing things, whereas Rhaenyra seems to be largely staying back at home at Dragonstone. So there's a kind of a potential split going on there as well. The other thing to pick up on is probably in episode 1 we're going to be getting, and they may put this out through the season, but Jace's mission north. We saw Luke's mission to the south, but Jacaerys heads to, as I say, we've seen shots of Jane Arryn to the Vale, and also up to the north. We've seen shots of him up in the north with Cregan Stark. So that will be quite important. I think that for those read the book, one of the favorite little bits with so many possibilities is this meeting between Jacaerys and Cregan Stark, which draws this kind of explicit link, in our minds at least, in the show, between the Targaryens, who now have got this prophecy about we have to protect the Seven Kingdoms because there's a threat from the north, and the Starks, who clearly all the time they're caring about threat from the north. So that's where we're going to be looking. That's one of the emphasis. This probably isn't going to be a huge amount of screen time for season 1. We've been already told to lower our expectations for some of Mushroom's more outlandish theories about what might have happened while Jacaerys was up there, but we are going to see that. So that's the sort of the preamble, a bit of the history of where we've got to, the build up to season 2. I'll just do a few. This is, as I say, this is all of these pre-show live streams are charity live streams. So if you are able, and please do give generously. This is for International Rescue is the charity, great name. They go to war zones, they go to natural disaster areas and just provide the immediate relief, whatever is needed. Is it food? Is it shelter? Is it medical stuff? And then they don't just do the immediate stuff, they also try and make sure that they can provide more sustainable help going forward once the immediate threat has gone. It's absolutely vital work, and it kind of feels appropriate for the Dance of the Dragons, where there's a huge amount of war, and always the small folk are the people who get hurt the most and often ignored and marginalized. And this is a way I think that we can kind of just sort of pay forward in the real world for those people who are facing unimaginable terrors and horrors in their life right now. So if you want to say thank you for the live stream, if you were going to do a super chat, then please do be as generous as you can. I'll just do a few quick shout outs. Ailsa, thank you very much for the donation. A few anonymous ones as well. Thank you very much. Think I saw another one or two. Yeah, another anonymous for $20. Thank you, anonymous for $10. A lot of anonymous ones, which is absolutely fine. I appreciate not everyone wishes to have their name on the live stream, but thank you very much, everyone. Right, what I'll do is I've got some questions from my patrons. Which I will go through over the course of this. As I say, I'm going to aim to finish the whole live stream within about 2 hours here, so everyone's got a chance just to take a breath before the show itself starts. Have something to eat, walk a dog, whatever it is that you do. But I'll also try and pick up as many questions. Mark Shisa saying, should Robert be concerned that both Rhaenyra and Alicent don't look happy with him? Was it something I said? Quite possibly. Andrew K. Aegon II realizing that he has the real or true power and starting to flex it will be an interesting aspect to see develop. Yeah, this is interesting. So this is something that I have got a question on Aegon coming up, but it's very noticeable. One of the things that they did was that they had him not particularly want to be king, and then it was this kind of great show rather than tell moment of when he is made king and he's got all the people there in front of him and he's got the sword and he just kind of like thrusts it up in the air and everyone's cheering and clapping, and you can just see, it's great acting by the way, you can see the suddenly change the look in his eyes that, oh, this is what it means to be king. I kind of like this. So that will be interesting to follow because he's a very unlikable character, Aegon, it has to be said in the book. But they're adding extra layers. The way they have done this a lot, it's worth saying, emphasizing that yes, we have a book, we have the story from George R. R. Martin. George R. R. Martin is there to be sort of helping out in the background, but a lot of this does have to be created because we've got, just to compare to what happened with Game of Thrones for the first few seasons, for example, book 1 of Game of Thrones was season 1. Now, book 1 of Game of Thrones is it's a chunky book, and that lasted, and they did it almost. There was lots of extra stuff and tweaks and things like that, but almost they fitted in scene for scene. The what happened in the different chapters of the book, they managed to capture pretty much all of that. Excellent job done there. But when you're trying to compare that to Fire and Blood, what we've got here is Fire and Blood is a book about the same size as Game of Thrones, but the bit about the Dance of the Dragons is only a bit of it. And so you're suddenly, instead of having 500-600 pages, whatever it is, for a whole season, you're there having 100, 150 pages for 4, 5 seasons. So you have to, if you're being unkind, pad it out a lot. Or if you're being more kind, then you have to add extra layers in that were not there. And a lot of the characters that are quite central to this, we don't get huge amounts of psychological assessment of them. Great example being Viserys last season. George R. R. Martin was effusive in his praise for Paddy Considine. He said to him, "Your Viserys is better than my Viserys." Paddy Considine added a layer there, or several layers there, that simply weren't there in the character that George R. R. Martin put on the page, and that is what they are doing. What they have to do, but it's good that they are doing for the TV show, is that they are giving us a lot more three-dimensional characters that previously Alicent, to pick a random example, Alicent was not a, a character that you saw too many layers to, really, in the book. I can't think of anybody who came out from reading the book thinking, "Yeah, I really like her. She seemed like a good person." Here, suddenly, we're starting to get extra layers to her. We're starting to see what it was like being pushed into a marriage again with somebody who you didn't really know all that well and who was much older than you. And then you're getting this extra layer of her actually having reason to believe that she's in the right, not just claiming the throne. Okay, anyway, we've got more questions about that kind of thing a little bit later. Steve Anderin 1003, thank you very much for your kind comment. Michael asking what time the TV show comes out in GMT in the UK. It's at 2 a.m. over here. So that's 3 a.m. For Central European time. Okay. Kirsty Monith saying, "So excited. Damon is my favourite character. Hope to see Cannibal, Sheepstealer, and others take to the sky this season." Yes, so let's talk about the dragons. So we're going to see quite a few more dragons this season. We will definitely see Aegon II's dragon, Sunfire. We've seen that already in the trailers. We are also going to see, crucially, some of the dragons which are on Dragonstone, we've got 3 dragons who are on Dragonstone that are previously have had previous bonded owners, is the wrong word, but they have been ridden before. They are Vermithor, Silverwing, and Seasmoke. We've seen Seasmoke before. We saw Vermithor. Daemon came and sang to him, if you remember, at the end of season 1. We're going to see Silverwing as well. And then there's a couple of wild dragons. There's Cannibal and there's Sheepstealer. Now, I think what they have been very aware that the showrunners of this, there's now just Ryan Condal is now the sole showrunner, just in case you were interested. Been very aware not to overload audiences with extra Targaryens and dragons before they're needed in the plot. So we've got, for example, people like Daeron, who didn't appear at all, and a lot of these dragons that I've just talked about didn't appear at all, because they just thought, if we're just talking about 20 different dragons all of the time and all of the different Targaryens with their very similar sounding names, it might confuse the casual viewer. So, which I kind of understand. So, but this season, they're going to start introducing a few more. So we will definitely see Vermithor and Silverwing. Sheepstealer, I will come on to a little bit later because that's connected to what happens with Nettles. Cannibal, I have to say, that they may mention Cannibal. I do wonder whether they will just not introduce Cannibal. Cannibal is not central to the plot. We don't need to see Cannibal. For those who do not know Cannibal, Cannibal is a wild dragon which lives on Dragonstone. Nobody knows how long for, a long time. And cannibal is called cannibal because it will eat baby dragons and whatever else it can find. And it's incredibly ferocious. And so when we get to the dragon seeds, nobody's even going to try and claim cannibal. That's just no. Let's not do that. The other ones, yeah, there's a chance you might cannibal. No, nobody expects that at all. And as a result, I suspect there's a fair to middling chance we do not get to see cannibal. Aisha, is cannibal bigger than the Black Dread? No, as far as we're told. So, Balerion the Black Dread is the biggest and most powerful and strongest and most ferocious dragon of that age. So, cannibal, by definition, therefore, isn't. We're not told exactly how big cannibal is, sort of compared to the others. I mean, we know sort of a rough ranking of these. Vagar is next, and Vagar is the biggest at this moment. Then we have Vermithor, who's the one that Damon went to see. Then we've got a whole series of these other ones, Caraxes and Melis and Silverwing, who are all quite big. Cannibal, we're never told exactly how big, but the kind of implication is probably not as big as Vagar, but still quite big and impressive. Andrew K saying, yeah, it'd be great to include, which I agree. Lone Wolf saying, I sure hope we get to see Cannibal at least shortly. I would love to. I mean, I'm with all of you saying that it would be good to have Cannibal there. Of course it would. I'm just aware that the approach taken by the showrunner so far has been to try and keep these things to a minimum. So they will. A name check, I think, is entirely possible. Is Cannibal needed for this bit of the plot? I mean, is Cannibal needed for any of the plot? I mean, you could include Cannibal does make an appearance during the sowing of the seeds, the dragon seeds, but you could easily tell that story without it. And then a Cannibal. Later on, Cannibal is blamed or assumed to have been a dragon who does something, and that's kind of like mistaken identity is quite important. So, but we don't have to actually see Cannibal for that to be the case. So it's not that I don't think anyone thinks, oh, we shouldn't have Cannibal. I think it's just in terms of the storytelling for the show. Curse Ballerina saying, I wonder if they'll explain how exactly dragon bonds are formed this season. I don't think they will say exactly. I'm hoping we get more dragon lore just randomly dropped in there. We had a few little bits dropped in through season 1. I'm hoping we get a few more bits. But the dragon bond itself, no, I don't think that we're going to get a sort of somebody reading out exactly, here's the A, B, and C of how this works. In the book, Fire and Blood, it makes it very clear with the dragon seeds moment, which for those who don't know the dragon seeds moment, basically the plan is, well, we've got these dragons, we don't have riders. Let's see whether there's any random bastard Valyrian children out there who can come in and claim some of the dragons and be on our side. And so they just say, hey, open invite, do you want to come and try and bond with a dragon? Which is quite radical when you stop and think about it. I've got a video coming out about that at some point. But it's clear from that, I think, in the book, that they didn't really know how this worked. Because it's not that they said, okay, form up a queue, we're going to tell you how you go about doing this. We'll tell you what the theory is, we'll tell you what the practice is. There seem to be like a load of different people trying a whole load of different ways to go and do this. And some are successful, some are not. Adam and Alin, one of them successfully manages to bond with the dragon, the other one doesn't. And as far as we can tell, their heritage is pretty much exactly the same. So it's not just about heritage. There's a whole load of different factors that go into this. So I think that they didn't know at this stage, which means that they can't tell us? Let's go to a question from Paul Al Gaib saying, "Hi, Robert. With the Euros, House of the Dragon, and the likes of Fallout or The Boys, there's a lot to watch at the moment. There absolutely is. My question is a bit hypothetical and dark. Do you think Daemon would have allowed Rhaenyra's first children, with Harwin/Laenor, to inherit the Iron Throne, or might he have seen to have them killed? If Team Black had won the dance, I could see him trying to get rid of Jace, Luke, and Joffrey. What's your take on Daemon's ruthlessness?" It's a fascinating question, and one that I will admit that I did consider when I was first reading the book. Is Daemon in the book is a lot more ruthless and generally follows, if you go by the principle of what is Daemon going to do now, the thing he almost always does is whatever gets him closest to power. That is a reasonable guide to what his next action is going to be. So the question is, he's got, or the theory is, he's got children now with Rhaenyra. He thinks Rhaenyra is going to be sitting on the Iron Throne. He's got children with her. Would he not want his children with her on the Iron Throne rather than these other children that she'd had with someone else? Added to which, on the TV show, they've really played up Daemon as being this kind of a protector of Valyrian culture. He's the one who speaks most in High Valyrian. He sings to the dragon. He gives Rhaenyra a gift of Valyrian steel. When he gets married, it's in a Valyrian ceremony. He's being held up as this person who cares passionately about Valyrian culture. Would that play into this, given the fact that Jace, Luke, and Joffrey are very clearly Harwin Strong's children, and he's not a Valyrian stock? So, might he try and get rid of them? I think the answer is no. And what he did have a plan. That's not to say he did not have a plan for this, because he did. If you go back, you can miss it quite easily when you're reading the book. And in fact, some of it you kind of miss on the TV show because they do time jumps and things like that. So the exact timings of things is not the same. But the speed at which he moved from a situation where he's married and Rhaenyra is married to a situation where he is now married to Rhaenyra, they've got a child, and then the children from his first marriage are betrothed to the children from Rhaenyra's first marriage. The speed at which that happens is astonishing. He was driving this through so quickly that, and feel free to do the maths in your head, in the same calendar year, Laenor died. That's Rhaenyra's husband died. Rhaenyra remarried Daemon, got pregnant, and they had their first child. So within the same calendar year, she moved from being married to one person to married to somebody else and having that person's child. Then the speed at which Daemon seems to manage to get his two children, the twins from his first marriage, to be engaged to the children from Rhaenyra's first marriage is within 2 years. The twins, Baela, this was different on the TV show, but in the book, Baela and Rhaena, when they get engaged to Jace and Luke, they are 2 years old. That's how quickly Daemon moved here. So his plan, if you're going for this ruthless Daemon, which I think in the book is the right interpretation, that's certainly my interpretation. If you're going with this ruthless Daemon interpretation of his actions, his plan was to marry Rhaenyra and ensure that his offspring get on the Iron Throne, not by killing off Rhaenyra's children from her first marriage, but by marrying children from her first marriage, to his children. So Daemon's grandchildren, in any event, will sit on the throne, or Daemon's grandchild will, in any event, sit on the Iron Throne. So that's the I think the short answer is I don't, and there's no hint either in books or on the TV show that he in any way seemed to not be on their side. In fact, he seemed to have created this environment where they were actually being more Valyrian. This is Luke and Jace being more Valyrian in their teaching and upbringing than the children, Alicent's children. They were learning High Valyrian. They were learning the Valyrian histories. When Rhaenyra is struggling with what will be she's in labor and she will lose her child, and Daemon is frustrated and wants to be doing things, he grabs Jacaerys and goes out and makes the two members of the Kingsguard who were there swear fealty to Rhaenyra and also Jace as her heir. That's his first thought, is to make sure that Jace is held up as her heir. Aegon Dragonborn saying Ryan Condell touched on the multi-layered nature of dragon bonding amongst the individual dragon riders, paralleling it with the levels of connection to the Force in Star Wars. Oh, I didn't. Yeah, that's I mean, he does like making that kind of weird connection across. So yeah, it's the connection is not something which you can write down and teach. So that this isn't kind of lore. This is more, is this bond here or not? Matthew Stewart saying, love the cannibal theorizing we've got going on right now. Yeah, absolutely. I will try and pick up on as many different things as I can from the chat. I think the visual effects team could do something awesome with his design. Yes, I think you're very right. Krothy the Bloodless, great name by the way. Does Juari do House of the Dragon, the music? Yes, he does. It's the same composer as for Game of Thrones. Matthew Stewart also asking how much we expect to see Alice Rivers this season. We will definitely see her this season, and I think we will probably see her in relation to both Daemon and Aemond. So for those who don't know, Alice Rivers, fascinating character. She's based at Harrenhal, and Daemon we've seen from the trailer, he will be going to Harrenhal, and then Aemond will be heading out there as well. Presumably, we've not seen it in the trailer, but in the book, then he heads out there as well. And they both encounter Alice Rivers, who is a kind of a magic-y type, basically. And so will we see much of her? We've had her cast. I can't remember the name of the actress, but she looks right. So she's definitely be cast. I don't think it will be a big role this season, but I think we will see her when Daemon is there, and then I think we will see her again and with greater prominence when Aemond is there. I suspect probably season 3 onwards is going to be more her time. Let's go to Auntie Slayer saying, hi, Robert. Hot take here, but I find Show Aegon II to be a somewhat sympathetic character, unlike Joffrey, who seems born a monster. I feel Aegon's evil streak is more nurture than nature. His father showed no interest in him, and Alicent echoes Otto in her use of him for her own ambitions. His pain is most apparent when he is about to be crowned and asks his mother if she loves him. Can you please speak to Aemon as a character in the books and your thoughts on if we might see a more obvious sympathetic side to him in the show, as we have with other characters that don't receive as much nuance in the books? Also, happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. Yeah, well, happy Father's Day if you are celebrating today. I think that there is a reasonably good chance they will show layers to Aegon this season, because this is the season to do that. He will, spoilers, if we're going by what happens in the book, he will become incapacitated about halfway through this season. So I think if they're wanting to build up his character in any way to be sympathetic, it has to be now. And definitely they've shown he didn't come across very well to start with. But I think that the clear message, he did not want to be king. So first of all, this isn't a thing that he particularly was desiring. He seemed to like the idea of it once he got there. Um, you're right. You're very right that Viserys seemed not to spend huge amounts of time with him on the show, at least. Um, and Alicent was definitely using him. And I think that he was therefore kind of left to his own devices a lot and had everything that he could possibly want, and that kind of ruined him a bit as a person. But he doesn't seem a happy person. And I think that there's a fair chance that we will see, if not something which will make us more sympathetic towards him, but I think we will kind of see layers there. He is not just a two-dimensional bad king. I think we will get to understand a little bit more about, I don't know, maybe it'll just be more that they're going to just show us some of his insecurities, because Aemond clearly doesn't think he'd be a good king, and I don't think he thinks he would be a good king. Commander Ray, I wanted to ask you about one of the early seasons in episode 1, season 1, where we see several Northerners in the tourney, including a Stark who was later killed in a fight at the tourney. Do we have any information about why Starks were there, and if that will play into anything we get in the North? I know it's been years, but the North remembers. Okay, yes. So this is a throwback. Thank you very much. So if you remember episode 1 of season 1, there's the not the hands tourney, the heirs tourney. So Viserys calls a tourney to celebrate the fact that his son is going to be born. And there's the jousting, and there's a melee, and Emma goes into labor during it. It was really quite visceral. And quite affecting, and effective, it has to be said, uh, as a sort of a piece of art, really, juxtaposing what happened in the tourney against what was happening with Emma in the birthing room. And in amongst all that, you can blink and you miss it. So if you didn't see it, do not worry. But there was definitely somebody from House Stark there. They had a big wolf sigil on their armor. They got their head bashed in by a mace or something. We didn't see who by, but it was in the melee, and that was pretty much it. So, were we given any words of explanation? No. You're very right that Starks tend not to come all the way down for tourneys, and they tend to, well, Ned Stark in particular was very clear, I don't want to show people in tourneys what I can do, just in case I ever have to actually fight them. That's him personally, but does seem to be more broadly the case for the North. So why was there a Stark there? Well, you could imagine, we're not told, but you could imagine that Viserys would have sort of put out the message. This is an important tourney, for all the kingdom should come here to help me celebrate the birth of my heir. And the Starks would have thought, well, we should send someone. And so they send someone down for it. Who they are is not important. It's simply the fact that there was a representative there from House Stark. At a slightly more meta level, in terms of what the showrunners were trying to achieve with that, because they didn't have to show us a member of House Stark, this was a re-establishing thing. If you take your mind back a couple of years, everybody after Game of Thrones season 8, everybody was very nervous when we came to House of the Dragon. We didn't really know what to expect, and the showrunners will have been very aware that, whereas us book nerds know all of these other minor houses and things like that, the casual viewer will really only remember from Game of Thrones. Oh, there's the Targaryens, there's the Lannisters, there's the Starks, and a handful of others. And so whereas a commitment was made, George R. R. Martin specifically asked for this, for there to be lots of good use of sigils, lots of different houses' sigils going up. They will almost certainly have thought, well, we need to have some things that people can recognize and can feel nice and reassured about. This is a world that I know, this is a world that I understand. So I think that was probably also a little bit of it. They just wanted a reassuring stark presence, even if we didn't really see it, a reassuring stark presence. Erin Sunex saying Aegon II will be the breakout character this season, the better for himself, not so much for everybody else. Yeah, perhaps. And Lady Pushkins, thank you so much for the donation. Hugely appreciate it. JJ saying, is there a Discord for the channel? There isn't, but it's a thing that I've been meaning to do for a very long time. So at some point when I when I have the time, which is probably realistically, it's not during the time of the show. And JJ saying my first time live. So welcome, by the way, as well. It's fantastic to see you. Okay, let's go to a question from 444 saying, hi, Robert. For the last couple of years, there was a race for the next Game of Thrones among the studios. And I think only HBO managed to deliver such a thing in the form of House of the Dragon. What are your biggest hopes and fears before the new season starts? My biggest hope was to change the intro with the rivers of blood meandering through Viserys' model of Valyria, which I found very confusing. I heard that it was changing to something that represents a style of Bayeux tapestry. I think this is a great idea. Can't wait to see it. George R. R. Tolkien is also saying salutations. I had heard online that the opening theme was going to be a tapestry of the stories we got to see in season 1 of House of the Dragon. Do you think the plan the entire time was to change the intro to this? Do you think they decided to add it after because they didn't completely like the first one? So yes, we are going to get a new title sequence for season 2 of House of the Dragon. This title sequence, we have been told, is a tapestry style thing, which we're going to sort of see woven in front of our eyes, and it's going to be showing us the story of what's going on. Now, I will read, rather than me trying to explain it, Ryan Condal has sort of gone on the record here and said what this is. So this is what the showrunner says. The idea was, if the first season was about ancestry and bloodlines, season 2 is now about being part of this living history, this period that becomes very seismic, both in this time and then for all the decades to come. This is such a famous time in history that even characters in the Song of Ice and Fire books are thinking back to the Dance of the Dragons, which is the most brutal and bloody civil war fought in this time. So that's the idea, is that at least the way they presented the idea was that season 1 was about establishing sort of the bloodlines of House Targaryen, and now this is about the actual history. This now is about the events that happen, and the Bayeux tapestry, which for anyone who doesn't really know the Bayeux tapestry, fantastic, beautiful thing. If you ever get a chance to go to Bayeux, it's telling the history of the Norman invasion of England back in 1066, which is at least part of the inspiration for Aegon's invasion that George R. R. Martin took, and it tells it through a tapestry. So you see, here's a bit here talking about, and then the Normans charged in, and then here's a bit here, and then an arrow stuck in somebody's eye. That the whole thing there, and it's beautiful. And so I really like this idea of having the title sequence like this. Now, the underlying question from both of those patrons there was very much, was this always the plan? They are never going to say, actually, we thought it was a really good idea to have all of those little streams of blood going through, and then trying to show the family tree by sort of coming into those little circle things and then splitting off into different. But realistically, it was a bit complicated. Only the mega fans really understood what was going on, and even they didn't love it. So I don't think they're ever going to say that. I mean, I'm sure we've all got views on it. I definitely picked up the impression from the majority of people weren't that enamored of it. It has to be said, and some outright disliked it. Which, when you have such a, for Game of Thrones, such an amazing title sequence that everyone loved, to then go to something that people are just a bit meh about and didn't really understand, I can completely get why they changed it to this. We'll talk about this next week. People think, but yeah, that's sort of talk about having changing title sequences, which, if you remember on Game of Thrones, they did. They showed that they moved the sort of around the map to where things were, and then the map itself changed depending on what happened. Winterfell had burned to the ground on one for a few episodes, and then it got rebuilt, that kind of thing. I hope that this tapestry shifts through the season and through the seasons if they stick with it, so that we see more and more of the things that have happened as a kind of a reminder of the story so far. I would personally really like that. Andrew K saying wouldn't mind if they altered the opening score either, going a bit heavier with the Targ theme. Yeah, I do. I mean, I obviously love the Game of Thrones theme, but I will admit to have been a little disappointed that we didn't get something new from Raman Djawadi about for the theme here. Um, but yeah, I think that ship may have sailed, unfortunately. And just flicking back through. Mathieu saying Ryan Condal and Sarah Hess have gone on record saying it wasn't their decision. They wanted to, this is about the number of episodes. They wanted 10, just didn't get it, which probably means they had to shorten it some. So just to clarify, so everyone knows, season 1 had 10 episodes. Season 2 has 8 episodes. Now, yes, they did want 10 and got told that they were going to have 8. That's a, in many ways, slightly baffling decision, in as much as this was the biggest hit that HBO could possibly have imagined here. This was the biggest things that they've done since Game of Thrones. But if you want to look on the bright side of this, we're going to have 8 long, as far as we can tell, 8 long episodes. Now, House of the Dragon episodes were already reasonably long, but episode 1, they've given us the timings for the first 2 episodes. Episode 1 is a bit over an hour. Episode 2 is 70 something minutes, so we're then up into like an hour and a quarter. So if they keep that up through the 8 episodes, actually it might turn out to be not that much less screen time. And so I'm not too much hating it. For me, the most important thing is the fact that each episode works as an episode. It has an arc as an episode, and it doesn't just sort of feel, well, we've been told it has to be 8, so we'll just sort of chop it here and chop it here. I trust them. I'm sure that they will do that, but that for me is far more important than the number of episodes. You could have pushed, because it was over such a long period of time, you could have pushed season 1 out to 12, 15 episodes if you want to. But what they did was they squashed everything into that 10 episodes, and moved some things around in time to make sure that each episode worked as an episode. So as long as that continues to happen, and they shouldn't have to move much in time this time because everything is just proceeding normally without time skips, as long as that is all working, then I think I'm going to be a happy Robert. let's go. Auntie Slayer saying, I think they went with the original GOT song to give viewers the familiarity that it was a partner show, but it can stand on its own two legs now. Yeah, I mean, I would agree. There was a lot of there will have been a lot of nervousness in HBO that this had to work because they'd spent a lot of money on it, and they wanted, therefore, to be making the connection for casual viewers of Game of Thrones. If you remember, they kind of started out explicitly linking it into Daenerys, giving us the intro thing saying this is the connection across to the story that you already know. They didn't just go into it. And then they had the title music. Then they tried to make sure that we had a whole load of houses that we recognized appearing quite early on. So, yeah, there was a lot of reassuring there. 444 also was talking about biggest fear for the season and saying, my biggest fear is that my most favourite member of the Greens, Deeren, and my favourite dragon seed, Nettles, may not appear in this season and may be postponed to the next one. Even bigger fear is that they were cut from the series entirely or merged with other characters. So these are the two, and I understand this fear absolutely. Deeren is he is the youngest son of Alicent and Viserys, and he is down in Old Town. So season one, there was a little bit of talk about why aren't we being told about Deeren. He shouldn't have. He shouldn't. I mean, he could have appeared a little bit, maybe some of the earlier episodes, but he was basically at the end of that season, timing wise, he should have been down in Old Town. So as we don't go to Old Town in season one, then we shouldn't see him. So that kind of made sense, but everyone was just a little bit nervous that he wasn't going to appear. He is definitely going to appear. Because he will play the deeper into the story we get, the more important he will become. Because he has a dragon, and he is basically heading with the force from the west towards King's Landing, and that is an active and real threat to the Blacks because, as we've already said, the balance of dragon power, so to speak, is kind of on a knife edge towards the start of this story. And if another dragon comes and joins the fray, then that kind of just pushes it a little bit more towards Team Green's side. And it does also mean that any battles which happen down with that army marching from Old Town, they've got dragon air support. So suddenly an entire army could face them and get wiped out because there's a dragon. So he will become very important later on in this story. We have had specific confirmation from Ryan Condal and George R. R. Martin. He is there. He is in the canon for the show. They just didn't want to introduce him in season one because it would just confuse things with a character who wasn't going to actually do anything in season one. But you might add an extra Targaryen in just to confuse things. So they didn't want to do that. Should he appear in season two? Probably, but this will depend on when they move it. Having said that, I'm not expecting them to do too much time shifting. There are some things that they may move later on in the season, just to fit everything in with the overall arc of the season. So we should get Deeren heading from Old Town out and start coming towards King's Landing. But they may decide, actually, let's just focus in on Dragonstone and King's Landing and Harrenhal for the time being. Let's not worry about what's going on elsewhere. Let's just keep that kind of triangle of places as the focus of what's going on. And I would understand that. So Deeren will appear. There is no doubt about that. Whether he appears this season, who knows? Nettles is a different matter. Now, the dragon seeds do happen this season. We have seen images of the dragon seeds, and they're definitely, timing wise, they definitely should happen as well. So to remind you, this is Team Black. We've got a lot of dragons. We haven't got a lot of dragon riders. Let's just see whether there's any bastard Targaryen children hanging around here on Dragonstone who can come and dragon bond and join our team. It's a radical policy. It changes hundreds of years of Targaryen policy not to let anyone who wasn't a Targaryen or part of the slightly wider Targaryen family bond with the dragon, ride a dragon. That was something only they could do. Now they were throwing this open to rando people they'd never even met before. This was a huge change. And so some of the people who bonded were sort of vaguely known to them. So Adam Velaryon is one. He was on Driftmark. He was almost certainly Corlys Velaryon's bastard son. So he claims sea smoke. And then we also have Ulf the White and Hugh Hammer, who claim Silverwing and Vermithor. Now, those three in the book, those three happen first. And then slowly this other wild dragon, one that's never been tamed before, never been bonded with before, sheep stealer, this and she's described as a small brown girl in Fire and Blood. She feeds a sheep to sheep stealer every day, slowly builds up that trust and builds up a dragon bond. And then she joins and becomes part of this Team Dragon Seeds. So that does actually happen a little bit after the first three dragon bondings happen. However, it is noticeable that in the promo stuff, we haven't seen huge amounts of stuff about the dragon seeds, but we don't seem to have had a casting that is an obvious casting, and we don't seem to have had any images. In fact, we have had an image of what looks like the dragon seeds sat around a table at Dragonstone, and she's not there. So this has led a lot of people to go, has she just been cut? We've seen images of Baela Targaryen, who seems to be riding a dragon in the trailer, leading people to go, is she just going to get replaced by Baela? Is that what's going to be happening? Are we not going to get Nettles? I think it's 50-50 for me at the moment. You hear rumors one way or the other. I don't think I know. I mean, I know I do not have any inside information on this. But as far as sort of reading the tea leaves goes, I think it's pretty clear that she's not in the first part of the season when the main Dragon Seed story happens. But she probably shouldn't be. She probably should be sort of like a slightly tagged on at the end, a little bit different. She bonded with the dragon over a longer period of time than the rest of them did, so she will have appeared on the scene a little bit later. Does that mean they pushed her in season 3 because this was just one extra character that, again, for the sake of trying to make the story work better on screen, did they wish to introduce her later? It's possible. So of these two characters, Deeren is going to be there. I don't know whether he's going to be in this season. Nettles, I hope, because she's a hugely important character as well as a great character. I hope that she's going to be included, but again, we don't know that she's going to be included this season. Trav asking where UK viewers can watch the show. It's on Sky Atlantic in the UK, so either through Sky or not advertising them, but I watch it through Now TV. So that's where you can get it in the UK. Question from Emma Scheiman saying, "Hi, Robert. Perhaps the biggest reveal in season 1 was Aegon's prophecy. Going into season 2, I'm curious to see who will be let in on this secret. Was Jace told before flying north? Will he tell Cregan Stark? And if so, what would that mean for the prophecy being passed down? I've seen plenty of speculation on when the knowledge might have been lost to the Targaryens, but what about the Starks? This might be a bit of a pipe dream, but I would love the symbolism of ice being inscribed using the same fire magic as the cat's paw dagger." Okay, let's deal with the Targaryen before we get into the Stark bit. The Targaryens. As I said, at the moment, as far as we are aware, the only person who knows this prophecy is Rhaenyra. And I mean, she sort of said a bit to Daemon, but not the whole prophecy. And the clearer suggestion is that at some point she will tell Jace, because he's her heir, and that's the whole point here, is you tell your heir, and only your heir. We didn't see that happen before he flew north. So maybe it did, but we don't know. When he gets back, if he wasn't told beforehand, when he gets back, I'm pretty sure that we will see him being told about this. And the issue is that for her and her heirs is that the heirs die off one after another, and then she's left with just her and a very small child. Who does she tell him in the small amount of time before she dies? It's not clear. So that's the Targaryen side of things. The Stark side of things, I can't see that they will be able to resist drawing some comparisons between the Targaryens' desire to be protecting the Seven Kingdoms from a threat from the north, and the Starks' desire to be protecting the Seven Kingdoms from a threat from the north. The idea that the Starks somehow have their equivalent of this, some sort of prophecy that is inscribed for them on, say, ice, the great sword, Ned Stark's great Valyrian steel sword. Yeah, I like the idea. I don't think we've got any basis for this whatsoever, in terms of telling us that this is what happened, or indeed that there is a specific Stark prophecy handed down generation to generation. It would provide a whole load of mirroring in line with the sort of the ice and fire kind of thing. And we would definitely need to have a smith who was able to manipulate Valyrian steel, which is quite rare in this day and age. Or this is something they've had for a long time, which probably appeals to me more. And they had that inscribed when they got it in the first place. They had whatever was inscribed on there. So I like the idea. I mean, this works really well as a kind of a literary tool, storytelling tool. I don't think we have any evidence that this is what did happen, but I like the idea. Cannibal the Dragon asking, do I think that the Baratheons knew about the prophecy too? Aegon and Oris were half brothers. Yes, it's true, but as far as we know, and we've only seen this, let's not forget, we've only seen this in terms of Viserys and Rhaenyra. So what happened in previous generations or later generations, we simply do not know. But as far as we're aware, what Viserys says is this is passed down from ruler to heir, not from ruler to half brother. So whereas I could sort of understand the possibility that maybe Visenya knew it, because she will have been Aegon's heir for quite some time until Rhaenys had Aenys, then that's I can buy that, but as an exception, telling your sibling rather than a rule that you tell your sibling. Let's go to Catherine Furseth saying, "Thank you for the effort you put into your coverage of season 2. Thank you very much. I wondered if you can comment on the dark twins, Damon and Aemond. They have a lot in common when it comes to character, being second son, etc. However, I've always thought their motivation for their actions differs. Damon seems more driven by his love of family, Viserys and Rhaenyra, and his pride in Valyrian heritage. Aemond seems more raw, unclear in what drives him. Also, how will their rivalry play out over the next season towards the ultimate end? I look forward to seeing it on screen. Okay, so Damon and Aemond, which I'm sure you picked up on this. They did highlight this on the show. Um, there is an echoing, and there is a sort of a rivalry, is probably the wrong way of saying this. Um, but Aemond seems to uh, model himself. Hero worship is probably far too um, strong a way of putting it. Admire Damon's way of carrying himself is probably the better way of saying it. So, for example, when in that scene in episode 8, when they're Vaemond is saying things that he probably shouldn't do in front of the king, and Damon comes and slices his head in half. We have this quick cut to Aemond, who is looking with what can only be called open admiration at what Damon has just done. Now, even in the book, the echoing between these two characters is strong. George R. R. Martin has set this up to be two characters who should remind ourselves of each other. And the name is the first obvious bit. Damon and Aemond. Aemond is Damon, but with the D put at the end, not at the beginning. So their names, even for Targaryens, their names are very similar. They're the second born son, brother of the king, who is much more sort of go-getting and proactive than the king, who is perhaps not necessarily the best suited to the role. They both ride quite fearsome dragons and are probably rightly viewed as being the most dangerous members of their respective sides. And Aemond marks out Damon very early on as being that's the person that we need to deal with here. Not forget the others. That's the person. And so Aemond, particularly in the book, increasingly becomes focused. I say particularly in the book, we've not seen what they're doing on the show, but they've shown us the start, I think, of this. In the book, Aemond becomes very focused on facing Damon and taking him on, until it gets to the point where Damon just kind of like events move on and he just sort of takes a sigh and goes, okay, let's just do this. I'll meet you. He goes to Harrenhal and basically puts out a challenge and says, come on then, let's do this. So the echoing between the two characters is very strong. And you're right, though, I think that the motivations are different. Joe Damon, yes, his motivations, love for his brother and for Rhaenyra, is central. This is something, incidentally, that the showrunners and Matt Smith, they had a conversation about this. They had a conversation about what actually drives Damon, and they came to the conclusion for the show, Damon, that yes, his Achilles heel, his soft spot is for Rhaenyra and Viserys. They're the people he will actively be doing anything for. They're the people who can hurt him emotionally where others can't. So he plays that character along those lines. And also, as I mentioned earlier, they've set him up as to be this sort of holder of Valyrian culture in a way that pretty much, well, to a degree that no other character has. That it feels slightly different from what's in the book, where he is a lot more power focused and power driven. Aemond you always feel like he's trying to prove himself in the book as well as on the show. He's there. He's the second son. Second sons is a big theme in George R. R. Martin. Second sons often have this kind of drive and this need to prove themselves. And he's so Aemond. It's almost as if he thinks if he can get rid of Daemon, then he will have proven that he is something. I don't know who's to say what it is. He's worthy in some way. So he always seems to be. I mean, he claims Vagar, that's such a power move. He immediately goes in, and that makes him suddenly be transformed from just this snivelly little kid to somebody who is potentially the most powerful person in all of Westeros. Let's go to a question from Raven's Oath. I've got two more questions from my patrons, and then I will dig into the chat. So feel free to drop lots of stuff into the chat, and I'll try and pick up as much of it as I possibly can. Raven's Oath saying, do you think we'll see Commander Westerling again? Also, it may just be that he may not have been present in any trailers, but do you think that Laris will be taking a back seat for this season? And Renabir Mitra saying, salutations, Robert and Dan the dog. Hope you're both doing well. We are, thank you. I want to bring up our very own Dwellin the Dwarf, aka Graham McTavish, aka Harold Westerling. You've mentioned that there could be a chance that his character is merged with Stefan Darklin, but instead in episode 10, we saw Daemon use Caraxes to force the allegiances of Adam Marbrand and Stefan Darklin. So what happens to Graham McTavish? Do you believe his contract was cut short? We're to assume that his character went back to the Crag. Do you believe that his Harold Westerling will be returning only to play a role similar to, in Fate, the book version of Stefan Darkling? Right, so what's going on here? You'll know Graham McTavish, great actor. He was playing the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. And when the Black Council happened, they're discussing what to do after Viserys' death, and he basically takes off his white cloak and strides out the door. He quits. He says, yeah, I'm here sworn to protect the king, but I do not know which king to be protecting because this house is divided. And he kind of marches out, and that's the last we see of him. Now, I speculated that they might try and merge him with the character of Stefan Darklin, who was the Lord Commander of Rhaenyra's Kingsguard. And what happened with Stefan Darklin in the book was that he decided that he wanted to try and claim a dragon during the dragon seeds. And I thought that might be a use, because if you've got Graham McTavish, you might as well use him for something good, something meaty. So I thought maybe that's what they were going to do. They would just, yes, they'd keep the name Stefan Darklin with a character over there, but they'd make Harold Westerling be the person with the cool story. In the book, incidentally, Harold Westerling, he's not even alive at this point. He was Lord Commander a while ago, and he died. And we don't really get huge amounts of detail about him. So that's why everybody thought, well, something's gonna be here, because you've got this well-respected actor who makes a very clear point of principle, quitting Team Green. He must be about to do something. The implication is that he would end up with Team Rhaenyra. There are echoes, incidentally, obviously, of Sir Barristan, who made a similarly principled flounce out of King's Landing. But where is he going to go? Now, he doesn't appear to be in season 2, by which I mean we've not seen any shots of him in any of the trailers, and he doesn't appear on the cast lists that have been circulated. So he's an in-demand actor. Perhaps he had other things to be doing, but it does kind of leave a question mark. I don't think he's gone for good. I think he probably will turn up again season 3 or season 4. Um, he's not going to, from the sounds of it, he's not going to be taking on that role that I speculated that he might do in season 2 with the Dragon Seeds. So maybe he turns up afterwards. Maybe maybe when Rhaenyra takes King's Landing, he suddenly reappears and says, "I'm here. It appears you're now in charge, so I'll come and serve you." Maybe that's what's going to happen. But I don't think we've seen the last of him. It does, and I've seen a few people say this. It does give this kind of impression of what did various showrunners have against House Westerling? Because there is another very famous Westerling who got cut from Game of Thrones, Robb Stark's wife, Jane Westerling. She was replaced with this character called Talisa, and the entire plot about House Westerling was removed from Game of Thrones. And now you have this other character who you suddenly introduce, House Westerling, and then he just walks out. I think that's just coincidence. But yeah, we as far as we can tell, he's not in season 2, but they've left it open for him to come back. Laris is a slightly different. We've seen like little bits of him in the trailers. He's not the focus in the trailers. Now, what does this mean? Does this mean he's not doing much in season 2? I think he will be doing things in season 2, but it's probably fair to say in the book this is not his busiest bit. He appears in the build-up in season 1, and then when we sort of get towards the end of events, then he will become more prominent. He has an important role in smuggling out people from King's Landing, and he has an important role in trying to end the war. But this bit here, not so much. He's not the focus of attention. The focus of attention in Team Green in the book during this period, it's what's going on with Criston Cole, what's going on with Aemond and Aegon and Otto. That's where the focus is on the action. So there's nothing particular for him to be doing, but we have seen that he is playing his own game. Towards the end of season 1, he was there just kind of subtly saying to Otto, I could work for you too. He's clearly there trying to play power games with Alicent. So I think we will see him playing his own game behind the scenes. We're supposed to be wondering whose side he's on. So yeah, he will be there, but probably not in a hugely prominent role. Sort of in defense of this, we have to say although he's a fascinating character, possibly in the books one of the characters I was most intrigued by during this period, but he doesn't do huge amounts. So we just are left to try and read between the lines as to what he might have been doing. Let's go with Andrew Roberts. Sophia Schmidt in the chat, the episode will be out in just over 2 hours' time. Andrew Roberts saying, "Hey Robert, so excited for the new season. What are you looking forward to seeing? What changes do you think they might make from the source material?" Well, the things I'm really looking forward to seeing are the Dragon Seeds and Harrenhal. We've seen bits of Harrenhal. We saw a bit of it in Game of Thrones. We saw a few little side shots of it, basically, in season 1. I think that they've clearly built a set for this. We even saw George R. R. Martin when he popped in to see the set last year sometime. He was standing in the Harrenhal set and he was saying how impressed he was. So it's clearly we've got a big Harrenhal set going on. I'm really looking forward to that because Harrenhal is a fascinating place. Now, as for sort of the things that they could change, it's the interpersonal relationships is the big thing. Now, there will be some bits and pieces that are shifted around. I think there might be a couple of things shifted. We certainly haven't seen any evidence of the Battle of the Gullet in any of the promotional materials, which probably timing-wise should appear in this season, but that's quite a big and significant thing, and they could push that back a little bit. I could imagine they could also push back a few, as I say, a few things to do with the army marching up from Old Town. So there's a few bits of sort of time shift going on around. But in terms of sort of the interpersonal relationships, keep an eye on Alicent and Rhaenyra. They shouldn't meet this season unless it's right at the very end. But the two of them, we're supposed to be always thinking about them in connection with each other. So there's that there. Um, the other thing to keep an eye on, which is something which happened quite a few times in season one, is this taking away of I was going to say taking away of volition from characters, which makes it sound like it's bad writing. I don't think it is bad writing, but it's a deliberate stylistic choice that instead of Aemond deliberately killing Lucerys, that was an accident. That didn't mean to happen. Instead of Alicent deliberately deciding to put her son on the throne because she wants him there, actually there's a bit of a mix up, and she thinks that she's actually in the right, and that's what Viserys wanted all along. So there was this whole series of these kinds of things where you go, okay, so it actually um, uh, it's not people being as bad as we thought they might be. There's a big element of misunderstanding going on. So expect that to carry on, I think, into season two. I think they're playing this up, which it is, playing this up as a tragedy. And in a tragedy, it's not just about bad people doing bad things. It's about some things being inevitable because of who different characters are and what they believe. And so the interpersonal stuff mixed in with this um, desire to add in the tragic, I think, will lead us to a few shifts uh, behind the scenes. Okay, that's all the questions I've got from my patrons. Let's pick up on what's going on in the chat. Matthew Stewart saying, when the season originally aired, I wasn't thrilled with the incidental happenings, but now I appreciate it more, but I don't want it overdone. I mean, I think I'm in the exact same position as you. I didn't particularly like it first time I watched it. Second time, I kind of liked it a bit more. But if this is going to be a pattern all the way through, then it does sort of take away from a lot of the volition of some of these characters. And Joshua Kirby saying, we want nettles. Yes, absolutely. Northern Tommy saying, unfortunately, it appears she's been rolled into another of Daemon's daughters as an aggregate character. So this is this is a theory. We do not have any confirmation on this. I do not have any inside information on this. So I will happily report what some people have said, which is that we've seen Baela Targaryen, this is Daemon's daughter, on Dragonback, seemingly in war. And she is also sat at the table with the other dragon seeds. Now, some people have taken that to say, well, therefore, what they have done is they've said, okay, we're not going to have Nettles, we'll just have her. I don't think we know that yet. I think there's still a chance that Nettles could just come later. She should not appear at the same time as the original Dragon Seeds. It should be a surprise when she appears. It should be, well, hang on a minute, who's this person? They don't look even remotely Targaryen. We've never heard of her before. And suddenly she's been feeding sheep to this dragon, and now she's a dragon rider? How did that happen? I hope, I have no idea whether this is where they're going, but I hope what they might do with this is this kind of realization that dragon riding has just been a Targaryen thing all this time. They threw open the doors in a way that was actually, when you take a step back, really quite rash, because of the people that they took on. They kind of they said, here, have a dragon, have the most amazing, powerful being there. Suddenly you're going from being not much to being one of the most powerful and important people in the Seven Kingdoms, regardless of who you are and what your background is. And please stay on our side. That is quite a rash. We understand why they did it, but it's quite a rash decision. And it might not appear it to start with, particularly if you have the three characters. So Adam Valarion, we Corliss can. He was Adam of Hull at the time, but Corliss can vouch for him and say, yeah, I know this guy. He's good. And then the others, you can say, okay, well, I kind of understand. So Alf White and Hugh Hammer. And maybe you can say they, first of all, give a good first impression. And they do look like, certainly we've seen Hugh Hammer, this long silver hair. He does look like quite a brute of a man, but also Targaryen looking. So it's like, okay, I get this. But then somebody completely out of nowhere appears, and it's like, hang on, what have we done? This person that nobody knows is suddenly riding a dragon. Where are her loyalties? Where who's her parents? Is she a dragon seed even? Is she just a normal person? If they go down that route and add the uncertainty here, so nobody knows who she is, where she's coming from, nobody knows. Does this mean that people who aren't Targaryen, aren't Valyrian, can be riding dragons? That I think would work really well, and that is possible, or even more possible, if you postpone the introduction of metals. So it may be, but as far as we can tell, she's certainly not in the first part of this season. George Hutto saying, any predictions about Alice Rivers? I find it interesting we haven't even seen a promotional photo of her yet. Yeah, we've seen the actress, pictures of the actress, but no, we've not seen any actual shots of her as a character. We've not seen her in the trailers. We might have seen her partly in the trailers. There is a shot of Aemond lying there in the arms of somebody who could well be her, but this isn't like a full shot at all. I think they're probably going to play it largely as we see it in the books. I see no reason to change this. Is that she is there at Harrenhal. This is a place with many mysteries. It's huge. People won't know their way around. Daemon will arrive there, and he will need somebody. He won't just be able to sort of land and sort of immediately know where he needs to go. He'll have to meet somebody there. And so she can easily be this person that he meets and sort of kind of like shows him around. Ditto for Aemond. Now there was, I think it was Aziz pointed this out to me on one of the streams we did way back in season 1. There was a little hint there that Aemond liked older women, because if you remember when he and Kristen Cole went out looking for Aegon in Flea Bottom, and they go to House of Ill Repute, shall we say, and this sort of middle-aged, maybe even slightly older woman comes out and sort of says, no, not seen Aegon around here. But then she kind of like says a few knowing things to Aemond, and it's very clear he has been here before, and perhaps been with this woman before. So they've planted this seed that maybe he likes older women. And Alice Rivers is supposed to look quite ageless, but definitely be older than him. Aisha saying, anyone else impressed by the sound design for Caraxes? When far away, you only hear the whistle part of the roar because high frequency sounds travel the farthest. Yes, I think that's a really cool detail. I do love the sound, the sounds that they've managed to do for the dragons. It's not just the roar. There's a something that sounds quite dinosaur about them, which is what it should sound like in my view. Okay, let's go to. In fact, I'll give my last little plug. If you've been watching this video for the last 2 hours and you're watching this on YouTube, this is a charity stream for International Rescue who go into places of natural disaster, war zones, and provide care to the people who need it the most. Food, shelter, medical care, whatever it is. If you can help out at all, I would hugely appreciate it. Just as a thank you for the stream, or if you were going to do a super chat, or just out of the goodness of your heart, please do be as generous as you are able. Thank you very much. Right. Let's go through a few more quick points from the chat. Andrew K saying, until we see a better glimpse of Sunfire, actually think the Melis is my favourite looking dragon on House of the Dragons thus far. Yeah, I mean, I do like Melis. Melis is a really good looking dragon. I think Caraxes, the way that they what they tried to do when they talked about this actually just before season 1, what they tried to do was not just have dragons that looked the same. This was one of the bits of feedback George R. R. Martin gave them after Game of Thrones. You had 3 dragons that they were slightly different, but he wanted dragons to look very different, that to have personalities of their own, to have clearly different colors. So that is something that they worked out for House of the Dragon to try and make sure that they do. And in particular, there's the different design of the different dragons. So you get, for example, Caraxes is this kind of like worm-like dragon. And then you get something like Vagar that's huge and sort of big and bulky. So they've got different designs for the different dragons. Sunfire should be the most beautiful. This is Aegon's dragon. Sunfire should be the most beautiful dragon ever to live in Westeros. So really looking forward to that. We only had sort of like glimpses so far from the promotional materials, so it'll be great to see Sunfire actually in action. Let's go to Sarion and Morning. Yep, 2 dragons we've not seen yet, but hopefully we will see later. Matthew Stewart saying Cyrax is also a pretty unique design. Yeah, I like Cyrax. That's all good. Thank you for the people who donated in response to what I just said. Martin S., thank you very much. That's very kind. A couple of anonymous donations too. I hugely appreciate that. Thank you. And I'll say again, actually, if you're watching this over on X, I'm aware that I'm simul streaming over there as well. I don't think there's a way to do donations there, but if you know how to do that, and I don't, let me know somehow. I would like to open that up. Right, a couple more questions. Zach K saying, I love Vagar's design. I've never seen an elderly dragon in real life. Well, not many of us have, but I do believe if real, it would look a lot like Vagar. Yep, absolutely. And Carl Karsnock saying, in real life, lizards are amazingly colorful, vibrant, and have all sorts of cool patterns as well. Okay, I think with that, what I will do is I will say, we're now 2 hours away from the show. So what I will draw this one to a close, other than to say I will be back next Thursday, same time, for an open Q&A. So if there's anything you want to be talking about on following up from episode 1, then that's probably a good place to be talking about that there. My episode breakdown of episode 1 will be coming up tomorrow, so that will be up within 24 hours of the TV show happening. And then I've also got a lore video coming out on the Tuesday, so keep an eye out for that. And then same time next week, we've got the next pre-show. Now, I'm very sure that there will be some post-show live streams. I would love to give shout-outs to a few post-show live streams which are going on. I just do not know who's doing it. So from next time, I will give some shout-outs of some post-show live streams that you can go and take a look at. But for now, what I will say is if you're watching this back a little bit later, there will be a link appearing somewhere around here to more of these live streams. I'll probably put something in the middle here going across to my main channel, in Deep Geek, to the House of the Dragon videos there, and somewhere around here is a link to my Patreon page if you would like to support this channel. Thank you. I did at very beginning, but moderators, thank you so much. You are fantastic. I've seen you were doing an amazing job in the chat there. Give the moderators a little bit of love on the way out. I would hugely appreciate that because they're fantastic. Patrons, personal thank you from me. And everyone, take care. Enjoy the episode. And I will see you very soon. Take care.